Thank you so much, leaders, for joining us on another podcast at Live. And today I've got a very special guest with me. There are two special guests, like basically, and we are hosting True Leisure Consulting today, where we have two CAs who are the founders of this particular organization, who will talk us through what value they are adding into the ecosystem, what services that they are providing, and also will kind of take their insights on a few industry related problems as well. I welcome you, Manish. I welcome you, Ritvik. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you, Rishikesh, for hosting us and giving us an opportunity to share our story and our vision with you and your leaders. Thank you so much. We look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Rishikesh. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
So just to give a context, so I know Manish for the last over, I think, 8 years now, because I think while I joined my first company post my MBA, I think Manish was also working in that company. He was taking care, he was into the finance team, and we share the relationship for that time. And I've seen him, from that time to now, so much focused on the client, so much focused on the work done. So kudos to you, Manish.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for starting such kind of consulting services, because which is very much required by startups and companies all across the globe.
Yeah.
So very first question to both of you, like, if you can, kind of take us through your journey, that what basically led you to start the firm?
So, this is a very, I think, a relevant question for all the mid-age career professionals who have achieved something in their professional journey through job or corporate job, but they now want to achieve something more, build something. I think the common question, which is like being a baniya, I would say कि यार अपना खुद का होना चाहिए, धंधा अपना और जब तक नहीं है वो कुछ नहीं है, legacy नहीं. So that was the quite instinct, but moving to the broader, I think industry wise, and what led me to feel is like I worked in like GCC is a term now which is very familiar, but back those we called it as a shared service center or something like it. So I worked in organizations like Sterlite, your first organization, my third or fourth. I worked in organization like Big Four, PwC, EY, the likes of, and my previous stint with a organization called UiPath, which is an automation company, and it's a New York listed company, and they have their center in India. So I was managing from India their global tax compliance for almost 26 countries, be it finance, transfer pricing, indirect tax compliances for countries like US, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Australia, you name anything. I think I even used not ChatGPT was there, but Google Translate to understand the Korean, Japanese, and Chinese and Hong Kong languages to see what their tax forms actually mean over there. So I think those were the items which I think gave me a lot of confidence in terms of that if I can do it for a corporate, why shouldn't I do it by myself and for my own firm? And the decision to start this firm, I think, was taken alongside my senior mentor who was not there on this call, but yeah, he's kind of. And we were on an airport ride back from a cab from a coming from a conference. I mean, over a 20 minutes, unfortunately, he missed his cab and I had a cab and we met over the cab. And during that 20 minutes ride, we discussed something about the global tax and the trends. And he happened to mention that I want to build something, a kind of a practice different from a traditional tax or something. And why don't you come up and build up a team and do something together? And that's why I think I happen to have a mindset and then working on that part that okay, I want to work on a firm of my own and not doing just the traditional tax compliance or something, but I want to build a something global firm. And that led me to meet my co-founder and the partner in crime, Ritvik, who comes into picture and he will share his journey and how he is contributing to the True Ledger now.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. So it was something like I and Manish, we worked together and we did our architecture in a similar firm. And then the time drifted, and he was after qualifying, he was working in some other company. I was also working in some other company. So that all it happened that one day we were speaking on phone, and because of some query I had, and so I was discussing with him. It just happened that he asked me that are you interested in global outsourcing? It all happened that I was also looking and exploring in this global opportunity market. And I think it was the right time and the right thing happened at that time that we stepped together. So it was something, my experience, if you say that I worked in one of the big four, I was in the assurance department. And I had then, over the years, I've gained acumen in AS, IFRS, and US GAAP, IPO readiness, and lot of things. So, and that was the thing, since I had this expertise in there, so, and bookkeeping, accounting. So that was also in my mind to start something to explore the global market as because it's the right time right now to start something
India is the decade, yeah.
Yeah.
People are look forwarding to India as a market. So why not India be a global talent hub for serving the global clients? So that was the whole mission and the story. And Ritvik came from a very rich background of financial reporting, coming from likes of EY. He has his own expertise, I think Ritvik will share. He has his own
Yeah.
expertise in building his own practice from the ground up.
Yeah,
So
that is
he has
true.
the rich 7, 8 years of entrepreneurial experience.
Yeah. So it's like after my stint from EY, so I jumped into my domestic practice. So there I gave a substantial portion of 6 to 7 years in creating from scratch a domestic practice. And then it was something more to explore to create a new department or a new service line or something. Then we thought of to do something, and that Manish came into this picture.
Yeah.
And then we together started this True Ledger Consulting, and that's our mission to take it more forward.
Thank you so much, Manish and Ritvik, for taking us to your journey. Now, the first question is that what type of businesses today should seriously consider outsourcing their accounting and tax function?
Yeah. So I think the question should not be who should, but rather who should not. I think, as I said, I mean, if you see, I mean, before answering this question, I will just set up the context, and I think that would be helpful for leaders to understand the conversation around the global accounting market, how the trends are shaping, or I think a brief trends, and then and how India is well poised and positioned to serve the global market. So I think globally we see in especially the largest market for us is the US and the North America and some part of the APAC market. But overall, the trend is that the accounting professions, they are not new students or the professionals joining up. I think that's declining trend. But yes, somehow the numbers are increasing. But still, the kind of accounting professionals or the accounting students or the graduate that India produces is still far back. I think 2 or 3 times more than a year than they produce in 3 years. So that's I think the skill availability we have. And the other is, I think, a very resourceful population in terms of dynamics, in terms of the both the geographical or the demographic terms. We support the people are young, whereas the CPAs over their average age of a CPA somewhere around mid 50s or 40s. But I consider myself as a young still and hope to remain young. So, and there are other people, I mean, below me, I think most of our team that I'm hiring is a young population. So I think the demographics are very supportive enough that we can work hard, we can stay up late night, we can work over there. And the other part is that obviously English language is something which is their common factor, which that make us a good market to serve to the clients. Now, and although more factor that keeping the remote trends of the technology after the COVID and all the remote infrastructure happening over there, serving clients over the global platform has now become easier. The access to the knowledge, the access to the software with the help of the technology has become a lot easier. You can connect anyone now over a Microsoft Teams or pass a journal entry on a QuickBooks accounting software. You need not to install a heavy infrastructure to do the accounting work for a foreign company. So all these things makes a lot more accessible, and India, especially as a global hub for accounting, being the chartered accountants, we are well poised. So that make us a very well-to-do and a best position to serve the global clients. And I think the type of clientage would be could be anyone. I think from a young AI or a tech startup to a grown-up mid-sized business having looking for cleaning up their books, or it could be as good as um, uh, a SaaS platform doing revenue. So I think our clientele portfolio is as varied as we have a client of, let's say, a startup, as well as we have a automobile retailer company. We have a hospitality client as well. We have a FMCG based clients in Australia. So I think there is no particular sector we should, but yes, we are carving out our niche in some specialized sectors like hospitality and retail is one sector we are trying to carve. SaaS and technology based companies, we are trying to carve out our market, e-commerce. Yeah. So those are some of the clients which I think Ritvik can add more on this. But yes, these are some of the clients which we are trying to pitch in and look for the target clients for us.
Yes, Ritvik. Yes.
Yeah, so that's why now it's something that there's no limitation of geographical boundaries. Like sitting in India, also we can provide the services to our clients who are in US, Canada, Singapore, and also India has a flexible time zone services where there's you can provide 3 to 4 hours overlapping hours, and then you can provide the services to the Western countries or in UAE. That's able.
It. Now, as advisors from India, how do you go about establishing that trust? Why should somebody out in the US trust us Indians? Let's say someone, in a smaller city in the US, a mid-sized firm. Maybe over to Manish.
Yeah, so I think I'll answer in two parts, and we can also add on the other part. I think the trust has two factors. One is whether that person is itself trustworthy, whether that person is integrity and ethical, because that's why I only to speak with you. Once I
Yes.
establish that level of trust, the next level of trust is more of a capability building in terms of that. Okay, now whether that once I've established a level of trust that okay, this person is honest enough and will not cheat, whether this person I can trust with my books in terms of his competence and capability, in terms of his team and overall thing. So I think the first level of trust is something which is very important to build, and I think that's runs foundational across every line of business, not just us as a financial custodians, be it lawyers, be it engineer. You trust a doctor only when that person is good enough. Then you trust whether okay, of course, the doctor degree speaks it, so and same way our degree speaks of itself that we are our curriculum is ethical based. So I think that's one thing. But specifically reaching out to clients, when we reach out to, how do we demonstrate that trust? One is of course, if it is possible, you go and meet the clients. I think the body language is your best gesture for someone to judge whether you're a trustworthy, how you are reacting to a difficult situations, how do you conduct yourself in the presence of a client. But when are you dealing with some remote clients, I think obviously on the virtual meeting sometimes your gestures do always present yourself alongside your team. As simple as turning your video camera on is the biggest sign that you are present, your commitment. And I think always also in your written communication you should not something hide facts like terms and conditions, small terms and conditions, and then coming up with a big disclaimer later. Or you should not overcommit to something and then under deliver. I think be honest and transparent, what you can do, what you do not do. Because sometimes I believe that we as Indians, we are always trying to please someone, but that
Yes.
should not be the case. You're not here to please anyone. You're here to deliver a business value to someone. And of course, it's no crime that you don't know something at that particular moment. Take your time and say, of course, nobody expects you to be a chat GPT. While we do have access to the chat GPT, but you should not answer when you are on the call. So I think that's when you establish a foundational level of trust. And of course, once you have that level of trust with your communication, with your, and of course, also one thing I think, and then that we can comment on the team's capability part, is when you're meeting your client, or always, while the objective ultimate is to get the business of the client, but you have to be patient enough that you should not be pressurizing on overselling or focus on the short term gains from a client versus the long term. If the client needs simple help, you should not come up with a proposal and start selling him proposal. Offer a simple help or a value addition. It could be as simple, client will appreciate it. Maybe if you genuinely deliver some value or give a advice, maybe it's a valuable advice, but client would come back to you. So I think focus on the long term value instead of a short term, and then Ritvik can focus on the
I,
technical parts and
no,
the capability.
I would like to add on here something like
Yeah.
first is like the personal touch.
Yeah.
I'll just relate one example to you that we went to Singapore
Yeah.
last year in the month of August. So we met a lot of clients, not a clients,
Potential meet.
potential clients. They
Yeah.
so we knew some people and we visited them. So it was like meeting people and by meeting people they know more about you, what you do exactly, the things we shared a brochure. So that's why how the client or the potential clients they come to know about us, and then they know come to know about your experience. You share your experience, what you have done, what you when you possess, and whether it is tax or accounts. So
And I
it is
think
one of the thing. Then the other thing is the credibility. Yeah,
when you travel so far, like a 5,000 kilometer, you travel to them specifically to meet them. It shows a level of commitment and from our side. Yeah.
and one more thing I'd like this builds over a period of time. It's not something very much spontaneous. So like if you deliver something, the client will come to know, oh yeah, he's performing good. So now we can share some more work.
Yeah.
So that's I think another way of
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah, I think that was our learning and example that I think we were about to onboard a new client, although it came from a referral, but we spent almost a month or a two on this client as a trial period, just to make sure that client sees that, okay, the team is capable to perform, whether our wavelength or bonding or a work culture. Because a lot of time work culture is also a different thing. In US, it's a low context country. They believe on written communication. They don't believe on calling just you. It needs to also that whether we are coping up with that work culture or not, client. So once it's all aligns, then only client. And once it's your client, it's up to you. Sky is the limit. You can do whatever you with your client and retain for whatever value you want. So that's our short answer on the trust part.
Now to Ritvik, we all know that finance data is extremely sensitive. So, what controls and processes do you have in place to ensure confidentiality and data security?
Yeah, the finance data is extremely sensitive. Nobody would like to share something, the financial data to anyone. You go to a doctor, obviously, okay, the doctor will come to know what problem you have, everything. You can straight away go to the doctor and just need some research as well when you're going to the doctor. But finance, something that one person will share with you only if he has trust on you. You have that credibility, then only the client he becomes your client. It's not something that doing marketing and you will get that client. That doesn't happen actually. So coming to the security part, like what I can share you about what we have done here in True Ledger is that we have established a robust IT infrastructure. We have secured our data in cloud and encrypted our data using the industry and standard protocol. We have secured with the system and an antivirus. They are restricted sites and access which our
Staff
the
members
staff team
cannot access.
and then all internal data sharing is managed by centralized servers. We have backup of data and disaster recovery in place. Then we have a dedicated IT partner also so that they can, if the laptop is not working or some system is not working, can take care of it.
Yeah.
Then compliance and continuous improvement is there. We have an IT process in our office.
And
Then also
certifications like ISO.
certifications, ISO.
Yeah.
And also we have, for the data confidentiality, there's an HR policy in our office. We have an in-house HR. Then we have developed in-house very much HR policies like the leave, attendance, and such things. And there's a code of conduct as well, and business continuity, business ethics policy as well. Also, we have installed anti-fraud and whistleblower mechanism. So I think that's all that we have kept these systems in place to keep moving and secure our data.
And apart from this, I think we have a culture of institutionalizing this. Like in a big four, we have seen this. Every year, we are supposed to go mandatory information security management training in our organization. So we have kind of always trying to, because the controls are as good as the staff is aware, and because so we are always keeping on training and updating our employees on the sensitivity and of this, and so why they should be always aware of this.
Now we'll come to CPA firms. So how do CPA firms can use True Ledger
Yeah.
as an extended offshore delivery team, and
Yeah.
what business benefits does it create to them?
Yeah, so I think I come to my earlier introductory background that I gave the overall accounting market, how the US it is evolving. So I think in the US CPAs, I think most of the CPAs who have earned a decent size of money and they have the big relationship with the client, they are either selling their firms or they are retiring it. But obviously, new professionals are coming up, but the kind of entry into the market is much slow compared to the business growth in the US market. So of course, and due to the new professionals being less into the market, of course, the staff is low. And when the staff is low, you take only work, the limited kind of work. And when you take a limited kind of a work, it's a basic economic growth. When the supply is limited and the demand is more, the prices are high up in the over there. And the clients are also now realizing that the CPAs are taking up less work, the price is high, they may not be getting the right kind of a service. So they are either looking for the offshore partner themselves. Like it has happened to us, we are also getting clients directly without CPAs as well. But ultimately, however, it is losing out to the CPA that CPAs are, if they were to engage with us, or I would say a partner with us, we can deliver the work to them at a same level of a quality and maybe at a price which could be of or a cost arbitrage compared to the resource cost they would be incurring in United States at a manager level versus what we would be doing. So, and the biggest loss is not the fee part, but the relationship that was built over there. If you keep on the relationship with the client, maybe you would not be doing their accounting or a tax service, but you could focus for their wealth planning, estate planning, or other value addition service that you can keep on delivering. And I'm not saying we will do just the transactional work. We can do most of the capacity constrained work for them. So because we do have built the capacity and infrastructure here to serve over there. Like in busy tax season, most of the CPAs struggle to deliver on the deadline, burnouts with their staffs, and of course they are constrained to take more work. So we can obviously augment their capacity for the both accounting, tax compliance work, and they can retain their client relationships and manage to gain more value added work for their clients relationship in US.
Got it. And now to, Ritvik, if a CFO or a founder comes to you with very messy books and growing compliance burden, how does True Ledger step in and help?
Yeah. See, we are consultant. We are in the consultancy role. So our role just becomes to help others. Obviously, they have come to us for some solutions, and it's being a consultant, it becomes our responsibility to help them with their problems. So the first thing is like a suggestion. I tell you, we advise them that this is our subject matter. We have our skill set on this, and this is how we can help you in clearing your messy books or your compliance burden. And if you are unable to do the compliances, whether it is GST or HST filing, income tax filing, or otherwise, we are there to help you out. Then second thing, like if this first thing is a suggestion, then we tender a proposal to them. Okay, highlighting this is something we can do for you, and the steps. These are the steps by which we can do. And yeah. So if they feel like this proposal is acceptable, so we go for the another map. We get a mandate signed from them for this proposal. The next step becomes that we use our skills in making their books neat and clean, tax compliant, so that they are clean by the regulators, whether it is audit or IRS. So that is the something they have come to us for the solution, and it becomes our responsibility to help them to make them books more compliant, to clear of their message.
Investor friendly.
Yeah. So that is the thing, to make their books tax compliant. Yeah. And need to sort them out what for, and then they seek our advice and we need to help them.
Yeah, and I would like to add, and we just not clean up their books for a one-time engagement. We try to build up the processes so that they don't land up in a similar situation next year as well. So our job would not just be to cleaning up the books. I mean, we are just not doing the surgery and we are trying to give him a physiotherapy as well so that he recovers. Yeah, and not land up in the same situation again. Yeah.
This was a very great, analogy that you made.
Yeah.
Now, what is the day-to-day finance operations do you typically take over for clients? And what pain does this remove for them? Manish.
Take an example of you or maybe any of your co-founder who would be listening. If someone is not from a finance background, the obvious answer is टैक्स या फाइनेंस अपने को समझ में नहीं आता. And when they say उनको समझ में नहीं आता, you can imagine the situation how interested they would be in controlling their books or how interested would they be in their books. So of course, this is a genuine pain point. I mean, they are not, most of the founders, they are good at tech and they need to be good at what they are good at. They need not to be good at something which they are not meant to be or they are which is not their forte. So of course. So this becomes their obvious pain point that tax and compliance deadlines, they're of course there. They cannot escape them because if you have to do a business in a country or across country, you have to comply with the laws of that country and you cannot escape them. If you default on them, there is a heavy penalty and sometimes business can even close them. You can see examples like Baidu, Kingfisher, Jet Airline. They defaulted on the statutory obligations and compliance and the end result is not so very happy. For example, you can default on a vendor payment, but you cannot default on a government tax payment because that's a given thing, mainstay. So of course these are the pain points. And now what are the how we can help in their day-to-day operation? I mean imagine a day-to-day life of us or as a what we do for the clients. We do as starting from your managing your invoicing, managing your collections, managing your end-to-end vendor management, making payments for automated payments, recording your banks, keeping your banks ready, reconciled, in paying your employees and the bit generating the payroll slips for them, your year-end compliances in terms of financial statements, your tax filings. If you are a VAT or a sales tax applicable on them, we manage your sales tax, everything on them. And on the top of it, if you are interested and you need a dashboard or a reporting for your finance, like to see how your business is performing in terms of, for example, a startup would look, how my revenue pipeline looks, how my cash is burning out, what is my GAC, what is my ad cycle costing, what is my total customer value. These are some specialized KPIs and metrics which we want to track. So that those are the things which we can obviously help you on a day-to-day finance basis. Of course, entity structuring and tax planning is also an area, specialized area. If somebody is interested to look upon, we can do. And of course, when we do this on your back end and you focus on your business, of course, the results would be wonderful for the business. They need not to be worried about whether I missed a particular deadline or whether I need to be worried about any penalty notice, whether my invoice is getting right and whether I'm getting paid on time, whether my vendors are chasing for me, whether I missed any payroll deadline or a form to my employees. So all those worrisome things which you dream of and should not be a notice where like we all have a fear like a middle class payer or somebody, even a startup high net worth founder, his biggest nightmare is getting a GST or an income tax notice. Okay. So, and once they are behind you, you know what to do. You don't know what to do, your accountant needs to know what to do. So that's what our job is, that you should not get those kind of notices or get into trouble and you remain clean and compliant and do business as usual for you.
Yeah. So the crux is like you have to take out the pain from the founders and investors, and we need to work on them.
We'll go back to the US thing. So, in US, every state has a different law. Is it hard to cope up with that?
I think Ritvik and I would both
Yeah.
can answer on that. So one is, of course, we as a professional are trained. We thrive on complexity and change. We That's what we are trained for, and that's what we have been dealing with since last 10, 15 years. I mean, while I was practicing in India, every year there is a budget change. Now with the GST coming up, every month there is a GST council meeting. More so, there is now with the new income tax has altogether come up. Similar situation in US itself. We have 50 laws, 50 states, 50 laws for each state. The new Trump government coming up and introducing almost 700-page tax law. So that's how I think we need to be reading about it. And I think I was just, before coming to this podcast, I was in a client meeting and I have a very interesting conversation with my client.
Hmm.
There was some confusion. I happened to know that my client was saying whether there is a corporate tax in Florida. I was saying no, there is no corporate tax in Florida. But in fact, there is a corporate tax on Florida, but no personal income tax on Florida. So you can see how the things can change. But having said that, we have a mechanism, because we can't go by our muscle memory. So we have a process in place. We have a training mechanism for our staff. We have subscribed to premium database and research tools so that we give right and the correct answer to. We keep on trapping, and of course, by default, I have an habit of reading and uh, staying awake at night. So that's the thing which keeps me on the tips for my job. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Manish has shared very much insightful, and he keeps on reading things. And let me tell you, he's a CA, he's a CS rank holder throughout his CA career. And so you can imagine so how much he is studious and intelligent he is. But apart from that, he is very much he has excelled in professionally as well. And for this question, as you see that every state, this has a different law, and there lies the role of a consultant. If it had been so much easy, then the business owners or the founders, they would have done their own research, and they would have come with the solution. They would have set up the HST, GST, whatever it is by themselves. But here we are the consultant here, and since US has a very in US every state has a different law, so we keep on updating ourselves. We have training sessions, and this is how we equip ourselves and provide
yeah,
solutions and such.
and the years of experience we have with dealing with India law and other multiple country law, I think that gave us kind of a experience to deal with the changing law and how to suggest clients on the best way
Yeah.
forward. Yeah.
I was also kind of thinking, so we have covered US, but then you have to support compliance across multiple countries, and you
Yeah.
already do that.
Yeah.
So, what are the biggest tax and regulatory challenges international businesses usually face, and how does True Leisure simplify this?
So
Yeah.
the primary the challenge is not taxation; it is the coordination. So you see, in US there are a lot of states, and everyone has their own reporting guidelines, their due dates, and the disclosure purpose. So what is the challenge here is the coordination. So each jurisdiction imposes their own distinct rules, reporting format. So that
Consolidating that.
consolidation of the data. So here we learn each day, we update ourselves, and that becomes easy for us to support our clients who are in the multi-jurisdiction countries.
And to add back what Ritvik said, that we have also prepared our compliance calendars and country by country summaries and checklists so that we keep on reviewing what's happening. And also, like for all the major countries we work on, we have constantly review the global tax summaries and what's changes happening across the tax alerts. We keep on reading. I think if that what are the changes happening, and I think across the country, some major trends are happening in terms of tax compliance. Is that most of the countries, due to this global tariff war and global minimum tax regime, I think everyone is imposing somehow a new kind of a tax on their own. So I would not say that okay, UAE is a tax-free country, go directly over there. But there may be some other regulation in terms of the banking, anti-money laundering, KYC, or entity formation, beneficial ownership. So not just tax, but there are various other regulatory compliances that one need to be mindful when they are either setting up a business or monitoring their compliance. So and you should keep on, let's say, for a particular range of, let's say, your tax is not there, but you need to always monitor your level of activity over there. Let's say if your level of activity crosses or some particular threshold, whether a sales tax or a digital sales tax become applicable. If you hire an employee over there, whether you need to apply for a payroll tax registration or not, whether you are making a cross border payment, whether you need to do a withholding tax or not. So I mean, most of the consultants say, okay, it's not applicable, but it's not a full or an honest statement. It is not applicable if you apply, operate within a particular radar, or if you've been below threshold. But when it exceeds those threshold, you need to be mindful of what those taxes could be, and you should make your client aware. And that's how we simplify.
So here I would like to, in this question, I would like to add, like, say there is a multi-jurisdiction in GST, VAT or sales tax. So how has a true ledger helped? So here we prepare a nexus and registration diagnostic. We do transaction level tax mapping, credit optimization, automate compliance calendar, technology enabled filings.
Yeah.
Then again, there is another multi-jurisdiction. We face the gap.
Yeah.
There's a gap divergence. So here as a true ledger, what we do multi-gap reporting alignment. We do conversion frameworks, consolidation, make the books ready as a for the financial statement consolidation, and then audit coordination supporting the team in this audit work.
Yeah. And from this technology enabled, there's a lot of buzz around AI and, technology, which is rapidly, kind of changing, accounting and taxation as a service. How are we adapting with it?
So I would say I'll give my perspective and viewpoint, and then we will share his. So I think there are two sides of the coin. In fact, I was reading one of the article. I think, and the quote is, "I'm finding it right now that leader says right now it is hard for me to review the work of one intern, but with AI or AI agents coming up, it's like a junior intern with a caffeine adrenal and 10 shots of caffeine. So it always comes up with AI like, okay, I've done my job. Here is for your review. So you cannot do a focus work. That was his observation, that AI agent always come up with bugs, and because it is high on caffeine, but it doesn't have a much logic. So that's what the situation actually is. And there has been recent reports from Workday and AICP as well have published the reports that okay, AI hype is indeed there. I mean, there is big money flowing in circular from OpenAI, Nvidia. They are all investing, and of course, but the accounting is a real thing. You cannot trust AI to file your tax return, to file something with your regulator, because I tell you the real problem or the real thing is a computer to computer communication can happen with an AI agent, because there is a standard language to communicate, and that's how the engineers are the worst at the risk. And the statistics are to support that in the month of January, US has alone laid off even more than the numbers which were there in the 2008 financial crisis. And that's because, and you can see the impact of cloud Anthropic work, co-work over there, Nasdaq crashing on a single day, India IT index crashing on the. So there is something buzz happening really on the coding and the engineering part. And I'm not saying we are the immune to this. We are also on the fourth on the list of the World Economic Forums, the most jobs were susceptible to the AI disruption. But still, I'm saying that the financial data is something which is reviewed by the regulators, and those regulators are still humans. They are reviewed by the stakeholders. The data is collected by the tax is collected by the government, and the government and over there are the bureaucrats and the IRS. They are still humans. The tax is something which country needs to collect the run itself. Okay, so you cannot be wrong about those things. That okay, but having said that, AI adaptation is still happening at a very rapid pace. We see a lot of, I think, QuickBooks, which is the biggest accounting player in there, it's getting disrupted by new upcoming ERPs. Earlier, I think there is a term called automated bookkeeping happening, where even without you post a rule and things are happening at automatic pace. OCR technology used to be now dated old. Now you have come at terms like computer vision or even something like that. It can read with 96%, 98% accuracy. Bill posting can happen. So, and I think you can have beautiful, wonderfully driven charts, dashboards in just a matter of fraction or second with a prompt. So I think we are also learning it. We are cautiously adopting it. We are not just blindly adopting just for the sake of technology. It is, we have to do it. So we are trusting it, trial running it, asking our team to prepare demos. We are running, leaving it. So that's, we are cautiously, I think would be the term would be, we are cautiously testing it and trying to implement in our workflows, given the sensitivity of the data we have.
I would like to add on here that we have QuickBook that is quietly famous and it is all over in the US. It has captured, it has a good market capitalization in the US. But now you see there's a rapid growing of cloud-based accounting softwares all over of the world, you can say. In India also we have Zoho, and now even that that there is a software called Cake that is being funded by the open AI. So you can imagine how much the AI is rapidly growing and it is occupying the greater margin in the accounting and finance. We have to use that AI as an agent as it because as Manish rightly said, you have to use AI as an agent purpose. So and we need to adapt it to itself. And there are various ways like we keep on doing it. We do like I just can tell you like we have Microsoft, Chat, GPT, Gemini, we do it for the research work. For accounting, we can do the workflow automation by Build.com, Docket, Keeper, etc.
Specialized tools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to use that tools as well to to minimize our work as well. In fact, decrease the work of the accountants and make it more error free as well.
Yeah.
Even to remind you, we are attending the AI Impact Summit as well, which is going to be
In Delhi.
yeah, that will be
A
no,
good chance to meet a
yeah leaders AI leaders like Sam Altman.
yeah, NVIDIA CEO.
Yeah.
So yeah, we keep on. I think to see what's the trend shaping of the profession, we keep on also attending these industry summits.
Yes, and we also kind of went through the website and tech, and we found out is that you also help with automation and cloud migration. So how does this translate into faster, closes, fewer errors, and better reporting?
Yeah, see, it is the right time to switch from just data entry accounting to automation of both. As I just now said, that we have Build.com, we have Docket. So that everything is there. So if I tell you example like Build.com, it helps you to post your vendor invoices. That is
Automatically.
why how you can automate your things. Then Manish also said something about more reporting insights.
Yeah.
That will help you to budgeting, forecasting
Yeah.
the books. That has in hotel industry, Docket is used widely. What it does that it helps you to transfer all the front end transactions into your accounting system. So imagine how much an accountant saves his time, and that he can utilize it in reviewing the books.
So
Yeah.
what role in this technology would be to? I mean, we understand the use cases from the businesses, like where is their problem, whether is it just an integration issue, or sometimes automation is not the solution for all things. First, you need to have your house in order, then only the transfer automation can help. You cannot ride a Ferrari on a road of a Gurgaon golf course. Still, during the rainy season, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can buy the Ferrari, but you cannot ride. Okay, so that's what the automation exactly it is. You will still have a bumpy ride if your roads are not on order. So you need to have the SOPs in place. You need to have the right process, accountability, and responsibility. And that's where we come is like we are not just a diehard fan of automation, but we are diehard fan of good business results. That's what we want. Before we suggest anyone to go directly for an automation, we understand their current situation. We understand what the problem code statement is and how it could be best solved through automation. And then we evaluate the vendors, whether it based on whether it is adaptable to your ecosystem, whether it is scalable to your future transaction. That's our role. We are not the coders. We are the functional specialists, and we do have a team of engineers and the functionals where we need it. But our primary role is the business enablement, like how automation can be a best outcome for you, and that's what we suggest in terms of implementing the tool, evaluating the tools, evaluating your current ecosystem, and suggesting the improvements.
Right. And since you guys are very deep into this domain, would also want to understand that what are the major trends that you are seeing in the accounting world these days?
Yeah. So like you see, um, there's a change, there's a trend going on, and we need to equip ourselves with this trend, go on with the flow. That's the thing. So audit is becoming, more technology led and continuous. Like in you see in audit, the various tools have been developed. Like you have tools for the data analytics, you have
Confirmation.
tools for the statutory dues, you have tools for the money rightly said for the confirmation, bank confirmation. That is an integral part of the of the auditing. And so we have confirmation.com that helps us in getting confirmation from the banks, vendors, and other parties as
Yeah.
well. And then the second would be, I think, the rise of the outsourcing and the hybrid finance model. What we also doing an outsourcing of the accounts and tax part. So you can see the thing that there's a rise of outsourcing as well. You know, we help our clients in those who are not able to manage or those who are having some problem, they can outsource their books to us and we do the proper accounting and handle their tax part, yeah, payroll functions.
Yeah. Yep. And I think the other trend which audit becoming more technology driven, because as Ritvik said that it's humanly not possible to audit. Earlier, I tell you an example. Earlier, your bank statement when you were pre 2000, you would have transaction of check deposit, cash deposits, or NEFT. Now,
Huh.
for a 10 rupees chai, you would have a UPI transaction in your bank statement. Okay.
Yes.
My single bank statement for a year would be almost 245 pages. I don't know how do I analyze this 245 pages. It's humanly not possible with Excel or neither with your human eyes. So you have to be with your somehow the audit or technology led has to be there. And that's how, as rightly pointed out, because of the increase in volume of the transaction. Look at the data that we are consuming. Every message, every SMS, every UPI transaction, loan, everything happening on a paper digital world. So you cannot doing your audits or financial transactions in a world which is suited for a pre technology era. So as rightly pointed out, technology is the key pointer for the audit or for the accounting service delivery. And the other big trend I think is happening is the consolidation happening at the US level for the accounting firm. I tell you, and this is not the business secret I want to give to you, but accounting remains a very highly profitable margin over the, and that trend has been because private equity is spot for a profitable, and they are just not looking for a profitable one-time business. They are looking for an annuity-based profitable model. So you have a manageable, predictable revenue flow, predictable costing, and earlier the accounting firms were less innovative, but they still do manage to have a decent revenue margin. So with the private equity firming come in, bringing in the global capital, innovation can be there. They can increase up the revenue share. So a lot of consolidation happening at the US. Apart from top four, I think top 5, 20 firms are doing the consolidation, acquiring of the firms, raising money, which Ritvik would add some of his examples from his India story. But I think globally, especially US market, it is getting the eyes of the private equity, and is something which is very prominently happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So we see another trend. What is going on is like the accounting was earlier more of a historical reporting, but now it has become something predicting language. Now it was like reporting what has happened, but now time has come like what will happen.
Yeah.
So now you give your data to AI or tools, AI tools, automation tools. It will give you the scenario modeling. It will give you the rolling forecast. Then it will give you the real time budgeting. So and even it can help you. What are the red flags? What are the warnings?
Yeah.
So it's like a more
Predictive.
more predictable. It has become.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those are some of the high level trends that are shaping technology, automation becoming more and more part. I think M&A and PE becoming very eminent part of the global era. And I think you would have all heard about the news of a very prominent angel investor, Nikhil Kamath, investing in Knav, a big name in the CP and accounting. Unicus, an ex KPMG leader, finding out his firm and raising money at a valuation of $170 million something, and is very significantly doing technology led work. So I think yes, these are the trends, and we somehow want to be part of this trend, or at least stay in the trend. And with your podcast, we hope that we could also make some of these news very soon.
Absolutely. And now the last and a very important question is that for a business leader who is listening today and is struggling with accounting, tax, or compliance, what is the first conversation that they should have with TrueLaser?
See, so I'll tell you. So thank you, listeners, would be listening right now. So obviously they'll be thinking right now, what is their the pain thing? Okay, like they must be thinking, can you do accounting for me? I'm facing this problem. But the more graveyard thing is something like, are they internal control in process? Are they exposed to anything, any kind of risk? Is their decision something possible? Are they able to take their decisions
In a different manner.
with respect to their financial matters, with respect to their balance sheet? So that must be their pertinent questions for them. I know they have their accounts and they must be having the problem, but the control, the risk, and the decision factor, that is the most critical thing here.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's the question one should ask. That uh, can I do their accounting? Of course, I'm a chartered accountant. I'm certified to do this accounting. But the real question would be, of course, I mean, are you able to listen to us when we make recommendations? What's your ultimate objective? Accounting is not just writing your books in a clear manner. It's more about aligning your governance. Are I would say, okay, you want to do your accounting right. What do you want to do achieve it? You want to raise funds for your VC or a next round of. And when VC seeks for a funding, they obviously during the due diligence process or the valuation, they look for a clean financials. Not just they look for a clean financial, but they look for a true and fair. That's a technical term. That the financial statement should reflect the correct position of the law. Do you have the right control of it or not? Your payroll is, let's say, some messy. The investor would have some discount your valuation, saying that okay, you're not paying your employees on time, you're not good governance company. So I think those are the conversation which we would have with a founder or something, that if you want to partner with us? What are your pain points? What is something which we can help you to from a longer term strategy point of view? Writing your books and account is just a one thing, but there are many other things in terms of process or delivery, automation, which we would like to discuss on a deeper level and help you.
And also, like the questions should be from the listeners or the viewers, like how can we help them to control their expenses?
Yeah, spend.
How can we help them, to explore what are the hidden incomes? How we can live, bring this
Trends
the
in their
dashboard.
yeah, trends.
Yeah, that is something. What is the idle money lying there? So that is how they can use us, help us, not the users, I don't know how to say, but rather to make
Can get
us, yeah.
can benefit our from our expertise.
Hey, thank you so much, Manish and Ritvik, for joining us. This was a very insightful discussion, and thank you so much for kind of sharing all this knowledge with our audience. And we'll also put the business link, in the description column. Always feel free to reach out to Manish. He's very active on LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
think Ritvik is also there on LinkedIn.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
there.
So we all can reach out to them, and trust me, like Manish, I know him personally, like because he is very deep into the domain, and the kind of discussion that we had today, even if you are not kind of ready to take the services,
Yeah.
this podcast is going to help you understand when are you ready to take the
Yeah.
services.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rishikesh.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for hosting us.
yeah, it was good to have you